Earlier this year, an animal was described from the Hell Creek Formation that would likely have acted as one of prehistoric America's top aerial predators. Named Infernodrakon hastacolis, this animal was once dubbed the Hell Creek Azhdarchid. Only recently have scientists formally described and named it. This newest addition to the pterosaur family Azhdarchidae is by no means the best known or largest of its kind, but it was an impressive animal nonetheless. It probably boasted a wingspan of just over 4 meters, or 13.5 feet from wingtip to wingtip. That would be considered a massive aerial animal by modern standards. Considering the bird with the world's longest wingspan, the wandering or snowy albatross, can measure 3 meters or nearly 10 feet across. These animals, the Azhdarchids, were not birds, however. They were reptiles, and some of them grew truly massive. Some, such as Quetzalcoatlus, we've covered on this channel before. We'll be taking another look at this giant today, but Quetzalcoatlus was not the only enormous Azhdarchid. And today, we will be coming face to face with several of its cousins from around the world. Join us as we embark on a journey back to the Cretaceous to meet the largest animals that ever flew through Earth's skies, the apex predator Azhdarchid pterosaurs. Let's start by meeting what is most likely the single largest animal ever to fly, Quetzalcoatlus northropi. Discovered in 1971 from the Javelina Formation in what is today Texas, the animal wasn't officially described until 1975 by paleontologist Douglas A. Lawson. Size estimates of this animal have been difficult to accurately determine as the only known specimen of the pterosaur was fragmentary. But current estimations align with the idea that it was indeed the biggest animal ever to take flight on our planet. If these estimations are correct, then Quetzalcoatlus northropi likely had a wingspan measuring between 10 and 11 meters, or between 33 to 36 feet. That's bigger than most World War I biplanes. Quetzalcoatlus, like most Azhdarchids, would have been just as comfortable on the ground as it was in the air, and would have stood upright, almost like a reptilian giraffe when walking. When it wasn't flying, Quetzalcoatlus would have been 5 meters or 16 feet tall, roughly the same size as an actual giraffe. When Quetzalcoatlus was first discovered, it was named Pteranodon gigas, and was first thought to be a colossal species of the most famous pterosaur of all. 2 species are currently recognized, the colossal Quetzalcoatlus northropi and the much smaller Quetzalcoatlus lawsoni, named after Douglas A. Lawson himself. We say much smaller, but Quetzalcoatlus lawsoni still had a wingspan roughly the same as the body length of a full-grown African elephant. The paleontology community has joked in the past that pterosaurs are often given very dramatic names by those who describe them, even if the fossil content is very slim or fragmentary. Infernodrakon, described at the start of this video, is a good example. It's only known from a single cervical vertebrae, and yet its generic scientific name translates to dragon from hell. Quetzalcoatlus's name, however, is very appropriate. It's named after Quetzalcoatl, the Aztec god of wind and the air, often depicted as a giant feathered serpent. While it was first believed that Quetzalcoatlus northropi was a specialized fish eater, this was soon rejected by Douglas A. Lawson as the Javelina Formation did not support enough large river systems to feed such an animal. This then led to the idea that the pterosaur may have been a scavenger, descending onto the carcasses of large dead animals to feed on remains. This came from the close proximity Quetzalcoatlus's remains were found to those of Alamosaurus, a huge sauropod dinosaur. But this too was later dismissed as circumstantial, with the pterosaur just happening to be buried nearby. Another problem presented by this was Quetzalcoatlus' inflexible neck bones. Modern aerial scavengers, such as vultures, have winding, flexible necks and hooked beaks to twist and tear off scraps of meat from dead animals, and Quetzalcoatlus had neither of these adaptations. Several other feeding methods were proposed and dismissed by paleontologists, including ideas that Quetzalcoatlus was a skim feeder, opening its beak whilst flying low to the surface and snapping it shut when it caught a fish, or a probe feeder, using its long beak to search for invertebrates in the soil. It is now understood that many large Azhdarchids, Quetzalcoatlus included, were ground stalkers. To feed, these pterosaurs would spot a hunting ground from above, swooping down to land in an open area with little cover for prey. They would then use their superior height advantage to scour the land for something to eat. Dinosaurs, small animals, mammals, and possibly fish would have been on the menu, and when a suitable animal was found, it would have been snapped up using the Azhdarchid's long, forceps-like beak. Quetzalcoatlus could not chew, so it would have thrown its head back to swallow its catch in one gulp. This feeding behavior has led scientists to compare them to, albeit colossal, ground hornbills and storks, who have very similar beak structures and can have very similar feeding habits. Intensive studies by paleontologists Darren Naish and Mark Witten suggest that Quetzalcoatlus could pick up and consume prey weighing up to 13 kilograms. The size of its prey was limited by the width of its gullet. So, in the event of a real-life Jurassic World, adult humans would be safely off the menu. The aforementioned sauropod, Alamosaurus, was one of the most common animals throughout the Javelina Formation, and Quetzalcoatlus was likely used to seeing large herds of them traveling across the landscape searching for food. It would have flown over vast, open floodplains, which were semi-arid, with average temperatures between 16 and 22 degrees Celsius or 61 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Smaller animals could conceal themselves in forests of flowering trees, but several very large animals would have lived out on the open plains. Torosaurus and Bravoceratops, two large ceratopsians, lived here en masse, as did the hadrosaurs Gripposaurus and Critosaurus. Large carnivores such as Tyrannosaurus are known from here, while the smaller dromaeosaur Saur ornitholestes would have hunted smaller game in the forests. Hatzegopteryx thambema was a pterosaur unlike any other. This giant of the skies and the land was more robustly built than most other pterosaurs, and acted as the undisputed apex predator of Hatzeg, an isolated subtropical island in what is today Romania. Hatzeg Island was once located in the ancient Tethys Sea and developed its own unique ecosystem as a result of being separated from the mainland. This was a world turned on its head, a land where miniature sauropods were preyed upon by enormous pterosaurs. The first remains of Hatzegopteryx were unearthed during a student dig in the Densiscula Formation of Transylvania in the 1970s. While searching for fossil remains, they uncovered skull fragments and a damaged humerus belonging to a colossal pterosaur as of yet undiscovered by science. The pterosaur was not formally described and named until 2002 by Eric Buffeteau, Dan Grigoresco, and Zoltan Chiki, who assigned it to the family Azhdarchidae. Although they would have never met in life, Hatzegopteryx is one of the few pterosaurs that could have rivaled Quetzalcoatlus in size, perhaps even matching the latter in terms of wingspan. What set Hatzegopteryx apart from other pterosaurs was its absolutely enormous skull. Alone, the skull measured 2.5 meters, or just over 8 feet in length. Lower estimates place the skull as being 1.5 meters long, or just over 5 feet. Moreover, unlike other pterosaurs, Hatzegopteryx's skull was robust and strong, adorned with broad muscle attachments that could have been able to pick up and carry heavier prey than Quetzalcoatlus. Studies on subsequently unearthed neck bones attributed to Hatzegopteryx have supported this. They are unusually thick for pterosaur vertebrae and could have supported more weight than those of Hatzegopteryx's contemporaries. Despite the difference in bone structure, Hatzegopteryx was a capable flyer and adopted the same method of terrestrial stalking seen in Quetzalcoatlus. This pterosaur is an example of island gigantism, where animals isolated from mainland continents and landmasses grow to immense sizes in response to an abundance of food and specific environmental conditions. As such, many of the animals it shared Hatzeg Island with were much smaller than itself. In fact, not only was Hatzegopteryx the top predator of its island home, but it is currently the largest terrestrial predator known from Europe in the time it lived. Unlike Quetzalcoatlus, Hatzegopteryx tackled larger prey animals and likely did not need to be able to swallow them whole, instead picking at them with its strong beak. The pterosaur shared its home with numerous small dinosaurs, including dwarf examples of long-necked sauropods unlike anything from the mainland. Megarosaurus and Aerotitan are examples of these, but dwarf hadrosaurs lived here too. Telmatosaurus was one of the most abundant animals on Hatzeg and would have been an easy meal for the giant pterosaur. Hatzegopteryx wasn't the only pterosaur here either. Azhdarchidae, a much smaller relative, would have hunted small reptiles and mammals on the ground. Hatzeg was a rich ecosystem crawling with life. Snakes, amphibians, crocodilians, birds, and lizards filled the forests and floodplains, which would have in turn supported strange theropod dinosaurs such as Bradynemi and Belauer, the latter of which may have even dabbled in herbivory. Despite its relatively small area, the Middle Eastern nation of Jordan has proved to be something of a hotspot for fossil animals, and this next pterosaur, Arambourgiania philadelphiae, is one of them. Named for French paleontologist Camille Arambourg, with a specific name referring to the ancient capital of Jordan, Philadelphia, this pterosaur is another of the largest flying animals in the fossil record. With a wingspan measuring 8 to 10 meters, or between 26 to 33 feet, this Azhdarchid was one of Cretaceous Jordan's top predators. Its bones were initially discovered not by paleontologists, but by railway workers on the Amman-Damascus Railroad in the 1940s. The bone turned out to be a huge wing metacarpal, later proved to be a cervical vertebrae bone, of an unknown pterosaur measuring 60 centimeters or 2 feet in length. Camille Arambourg first named the animal Titanopteryx philadelphiae, meaning titan wing from Philadelphia, but the generic name had to be changed as it already belonged to a genus of fly. Quite the contrast. The name was changed to Arambourgiania in the 1980s by Russian paleontologist Lev Nesov. In 2018, decades after the first discovery, more bones were found that may actually be attributable to the same individual Arambourg studied in the 1940s. These consisted of some cervical vertebrae, a neural arch, a left femur, another metacarpal bone, and what might be a radius. Arambourgiania is often described as the tallest flying animal ever to live, but the science points to Quetzalcoatlus being slightly taller. Arambourgiania may have been more slender and gracile than the latter, and would have certainly been an awe-inspiring sight in life as it flew overhead or stalked the land for prey. Studies on the humerus bones of Arambourgiania point to the idea that it soared on thermals and updrafts like modern-day birds of prey. It would not have needed to flap its wings often to stay airborne, and would not have consumed much energy by doing so, allowing it to stay aloft for long periods of time. From the air, it would have been able to spot suitable prey items on the ground before swooping down and feeding in a manner similar to Quetzalcoatlus. It was not as heavily built as Hatzegopteryx, and given its slightly smaller stature than Quetzalcoatlus, it would have needed to prey on small animals, swallowing them whole by throwing its neck back. Suitable prey items would have likely included fish, small dinosaurs, crocodilians, lizards, and amphibians. Aerotitan is the smallest Azhdarchid we'll be meeting today, but that doesn't make it any less of a fearsome predator. Known from the Allen Formation, a fossil site in the Neuquén Basin of what is today Patagonia in Argentina, this aerial hunter had a wingspan of at least 5 meters or 16 feet across, and is unfortunately poorly known to science. The only known specimen comes from an incomplete snout, of which roughly 26 centimeters or 10.5 inches survives. The full skull would have been much longer in life, however, but sadly has not been preserved in the fossil record. Using the remains of a very closely related pterosaur, Mistral azhdarcho from France, paleontologists have been able to reconstruct the animal's appearance and proportions as though more bones were discovered. Like the other Azhdarchids in this video, Aerotitan would have been tall, with a long neck, thin limbs, and a long, sharp, transversely flattened beak. As the fossil content known from Aerotitan is poor, it is hard to determine how this pterosaur might have behaved or hunted within its environment. Being slightly smaller than its giant relatives, it may have been more agile, but probably hunted in a similar manner, soaring above the ground before descending to feed like a stork. The Allen Formation in which Aerotitan was found is rich in dinosaur fossil content, so small or young dinosaurs may well have been on the menu for this opportunistic predator. Alongside Aerotitan, in the coastal estuaries of Cretaceous Patagonia lived an abundance of hadrosaurs, including Bonapartosaurus, Columbophosaurus, and Lepomposaurus. Gigantic titanosaur sauropods were common here too, represented by the likes of Bonatitan, Aeolosaurus, and Rhocosaurus, their huge forms standing like trees against the open landscape. Amidst the foliage lived small theropods such as Bonapartonicus and Austroraptor, while large abelisaurids Niebla and Quilmisaurus hunted out on the open coastal plains. Aerotitan may have been piscivorous, as an abundance of fish are known from the Allen Formation. Lungfishes, catfishes, and perches may have proved to be a quick snack, swallowed whole after being tweezered by Aerotitan's sharp beak. Today, we've given you examples of the very largest of the Azhdarchid pterosaurs, which were undoubtedly the biggest animals to ever take flight through Earth's skies. These giants, however, did not represent the wider family as a whole, and Azhdarchids were a very diverse group of pterosaurs of different shapes and sizes. Azhdarchids conquered the world's skies in the Cretaceous and could be found everywhere from the depths of South America to the far reaches of North Asia. Azhdarchids are pterodactyloid pterosaurs, who exploited an open ecological niche towards the end of the Cretaceous for predators who could hunt a wide range of vertebrates on the ground after scouting them out from the air. Their evolution remains one of the true oddities of the Mesozoic. Literally nothing remotely similar to them has survived into the modern day. Although they resemble birds, it takes a closer look to reveal their reptilian ancestry in an excellent example of convergent evolution. The largest Azhdarchids were more often than not members of the subfamily Quetzalcoatlinae, which contained animals that were closely related to the giant of the skies, Quetzalcoatlus. All of the animals we've listed in today's video, bar Aerotitan, were in this subfamily. Also within this group were the likes of Cryodrakon, a large Canadian Azhdarchid and one of the most northerly members of the family, Albatross, a slightly smaller genus from Romania, and Infernodrakon, a late Cretaceous Japanese Azhdarchid with a very long neck in proportion to its body size. Outside of the Quetzalcoatlus subfamily lie Aerotitan and the closely related Mistral Azhdarchidae, as well as Hatzegopteryx, a Chinese species known from immaculately preserved, relatively complete fossil material. Morocco was home to Infernodrakon, Wellenhopterus lived in Texas, and Aral Azhdarchidae lived in what is today Kazakhstan. These animals were extremely widespread and were all excellently adapted generalist carnivores, well suited to their environments. Unfortunately, the same extinction event that put an end to the reign of the dinosaurs would spell doom for the pterosaurs too, and the Azhdarchids became extinct 66 million years ago. Pterosaurs are without a doubt some of the most unusual animals ever to grace our planet. It's easy to forget that they were reptiles and not birds, considering their avian appearance and behavior so akin to storks and birds of prey. Azhdarchids are likely the most unusual of the whole group, with their ungainly, giraffe-like appearances on the ground and graceful soaring abilities in the sky. Thankfully, scientists have been able to discern a great deal about these animals from their bone structures and sizes, but there is still much we don't know. Hopefully, in the future, paleontologists will be able to determine even more about these animals, with future discoveries from genera such as Aerotitan or Arambourgiania. Of course, our understanding of these animals continues to grow by the year, and Infernodrakon, the newly described Hell Creek Azhdarchid, is a prime example of this. There are still several Azhdarchids that are awaiting description and that may prove to be useful in unlocking some of the family's unusual biological secrets. Amongst these are the Hornby Island Azhdarchid, whose remains have been found in British Columbia, Canada, an undescribed Azhdarchid that would have shared Hatzegopteryx Island with Hatzegopteryx, and an intriguing specimen known as the Mongol Giant, discovered in the Mongolian Gobi Desert's Nemegt Formation, a rich locale for fossils. This last one seems to be capable of matching the sizes of the likes of Quetzalcoatlus and Hatzegopteryx, so who knows what could be discovered over the next few years.